The secret to happiness that I've found is when you are going to separate yourself from the expectations, you're going to feel much more fulfilled, because the definition of frustration is when your expectation doesn't align with reality.
If it's part of our identity, it's not going anywhere. And if you keep stifling it, you create what's called an integrity gap. A lot of us are surprised, like, why does life feel so hard? Why does it feel so sticky? It's because we're not bringing all of ourselves together.
It is the subtlety in how you see life that determines whether or not it's going to be fulfilling or draining.
I know Rahul shared his genius there, but I'm not sure if we all caught it.
Dinesh, I love it when I hear a good success story. Don't you?
Actually, I can't get enough of success stories and celebrating successes from unconventional and unexpected areas.
I have a success story that I am thrilled to share right before we get into our incredible guest and everything that they bring to the table. Do you remember way back when we first started bringing guests onto the show? And one of our guests was my good friend, Dr. Salmia Kolor. And she did this whole episode about failing and reframing what it means to fail. At that time, when we were speaking to Soumya, she had failed her critical care boards for, multiple times. She was in a really rough spot, professionally speaking. Concurrently, she was also single and trying to just figure life out. And it was really inspirational to hear the mindset and the things she was driven forward by to make sure that she kept going. Do you remember that episode?
Yeah, I do remember. And, in fact, about 13 months ago, I had a chance to go to Austin and meet Soumya at that coffee house that's by the lake with all the boats, right? What's it called?
Mozart's.
Yes, Mozart's.
Yeah. So it's a really popular place in Austin, especially around Christmas time. They've got all these beautiful lights and things. I remember you actually meeting up with her and connecting with her. And since then, a lot has happened for Soumya, and she took her critical care boards again, passed.
Wow.
And
congratulations.
Yes. And along the way, met an incredible guy, and now they're engaged.
Holy moly.
Yes. I'm so excited for
Wow.
Soumya. Congratulations, listeners. If you can get a chance to go back and listen to Soumya's episode, it is just so inspirational. The episode is called Being Greater Than the Current Circumstances, and we dropped it in July of 2023.
Congratulations, Soumya. That is amazing news. And everyone on this podcast, we're all regular people. We're all trying to get to a destination. And it goes to show that you never fail until you stop trying. So huge shout out to Soumya. And I think that's a nice lead in to what we're going to talk about today.
Absolutely.
We've got another pediatric critical care doctor who has been so patiently waiting to say hello. Let's just have you say hello. Rahul, what's up?
How is it going, guys? I am inspired by these stories of individuals that have gone through struggle, and it seems like, used the struggle to fuel their own purpose. And that is just wonderful to hear.
Absolutely.
We're so excited to have you on because there's just so much that the human potential can do. And you have done such an incredible job of, I want to say everything. All the things.
No, thank you. I'm super excited to be here. I mean, usually the script is something very medical. So to kind of take my brain away from that clinical mindset and dive into more philosophical topics and the mission that you guys are going for is going to be great.
It's always fun to have a fellow podcaster on, right? And you're not only a podcaster, Rahul, but you are also an author. And I don't think I've ever said these words together. So medical education, innovative visionary.
Okay.
Wow.
Ooh, thank you. Wow. I don't know where you found that, but I really appreciate it. So I am increasingly fascinated by how we can engage the modern learner. I was just reading the Harvard Business Review, and there was a wonderful quote from it. And it basically said that AI will never replace humans. However, humans with AI have the potential to replace humans without AI. And
Absolutely.
This is definitely not a call to arms that we all need to go like AI crazy. But I think it drives home a really important point that fascinates me each day in my sphere of medical education. And that is, adaptability is a skill worth mastering. And the overarching drive for me is how can I adapt to the modern needs of a learner and really translate a lot of knowledge to high value clinical care as well.
A human that knows how to augment their skills or what they're doing with AI is infinitely more potent than someone who is not. And I think it's a difference between a human has access to the internet versus not access. Can you imagine if we need to look something up and you had Google and I needed to run to the library and find an Encyclopedia Britannica, right? Vastly different results. And I think what you're doing is so interesting, largely because I also read the Harvard Business Review, and I also I'm interested in how we can tap into not only human potential, but how can we really find ways to unlock progress and control our mind and things like that. I'm sure you've probably read Peak by Anders Ericsson and talk about deliberate practice, and we'll get into all of that stuff. So we're so glad to have you. This is going to be a fun conversation for both of us.
So Rahul, anyone can Google you, right? You have your own podcast. It's called PICU Doc on Call. You have you're the co-founder of HyGuru, which is, for listeners, if you don't know, it's an e-learning platform to really prep medical students for exams that are like their national boards. You're the director of academic advising at Cleveland Clinic. And you also, as Dinesh mentioned earlier, you are a pediatric intensive care physician at Cleveland Clinic as well. And then you're a former national board member at AAPI. What's the stuff we can't Google?
You know, that is a really humble introduction. And some of the areas that I like to highlight that have definitely shaped me. Number one, I've had the opportunity to be on the patient side of clinical care, specifically pediatric critical care. Excited to kind of delve into that as well. I also, over the last 6 years, did a long distance marriage with my wife. And so in the last 6 months, that's been a learning curve because we're finally living together. And I actually am a Bollywood singer. Like, I perform at weddings for my friends, family. I've also had some side gigs as well. So I try to keep a well-balanced life, and definitely am always wanting to center myself on these hobbies, including my own health, because I think they fuel creativity in all of these professional domains, which you wonderfully mentioned.
When I said you're good at all the things, I was exaggerating, but clearly I wasn't. I thought, just good at everything.
I had this conversation with someone, who's in their 60s, I would say, or close to their 60s, and it is commonplace to think that you should have hobbies and you should pursue things. But too often, like with many things in this domain, we tend to sidestep them or sidetrack them in favor of professional success. And what I've found, and this should be no surprise because people long before us have been telling us this, is when you make space for the things that you're interested in, then it doesn't matter what you're interested in. It could be comic books, could be bowling, could be health and fitness, could be podcasting. But when you make place for discretionary activities and you use your discretionary time in a way that fuels you, it like sets off the rest of it on a parabolic exponential curve. And I'm not surprised to hear that you're having a lot of success because you're making time to go sing and do all these other things that fuel you. And it makes you so much more effective. And I think, we'll get into this a little bit. If you took the time that you didn't go sing and you said, well, that's a waste of my time, I'm going to put that onto professional, working as a doctor or advancing my career, doing research, I'm willing to bet you get less done and at a poorer quality, but you still fill up the entire time. Let's say 10 hours, you'd probably get real 45 minutes of work done, as opposed to taking that 10 minutes and then coming back and getting 4 hours of work done in 45 minutes, right? Does that make sense? Would you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, I think you all can resonate with this as content creators. At the end of the day, we are, in this day and age, cognitive athletes. And so what we need to be thinking of is our free time is a time for us to set intentions that fuel us to go forward. I am very driven by something like relationships, and having this kind of personal conversation is probably going to fuel me more than my TikTok feed, which might be going away tomorrow. So I think that you hit the nail right on the head, Dinesh, about how making that space for letting your mind wander allows for you to center yourself back in the professional domain with much more stickiness.
Yeah. You mentioned something there, right? The about the content and consuming it. In my prep for this episode, I heard you say that there's a way to consume content that actually fuels our performance. And I'm just so curious, what do you mean by that, and how do we do that?
The two spheres that I like to focus on is not only the content creation, but then also the content consumption. When I think about the content creation aspect of it, this is an evolving mindset that I've had, is it's all about contribution rather than competition. So in this day and age, we're so focused on putting sometimes a piece of content and getting that dopamine hit of how many likes I get. But if you think about it at a higher purpose, that you're just trying to contribute to a greater body of knowledge, the frustration and the internal, maybe even subconscious anxiety that you get when you don't see that reach that you were expecting really ends up getting subdued. And so that's kind of the more content creation end. And when it comes to the content consumption, I've become very intentional about how I consume content, when I consume content, and what kind of content I consume. And by no means am I saying that I don't like my share of cat videos, so to say, but I have started to think about content consumption as a new form of micro learning, that if I can get some of these principles in my mind at a certain time of day, and I have a lens of action with that content, so consuming it and then directly reflecting it back as action, I've found myself feeling a lot more fulfilled as I go on these popular platforms like Instagram, etc.
So what do you mean by that?
A few things that I've done practically, and I'm going to be very vulnerable here. I have turned my phone into black and white. So my whole phone is black and white. That definitely has reduced the craze to come to my phone a lot more. The other thing that I've strategically done is put a lot more friction barriers. So anytime I am opening Instagram, for example, I have a app that blocks my Instagram viewing by just about 10 seconds. And it tells me to take a deep breath and actually pushes me to the Audible app rather than maybe scrolling on Instagram. And then just being very selective of who I follow and for what purpose. That purpose-driven content consumption has been a new theme in my life, and I'm looking forward to developing it this year.
That's good. I made a comment once on someone's Instagram who was purporting that, and I got a lot of heat for it, like a lot of hate. And I want to make that same comment and see what you think, right? So there's a lot of studies of people who drink alcohol, let's say on a Friday night, to change their mood, lose the ability over time to self-regulate their anxiety and their emotions and to calm their stress down, right? Like, so if you think about it, it makes sense. Friday night, tough week, drink a glass of wine, I'm relaxed. You do that for a long enough period of time, you lose the ability to relax yourself, right? And so I think these tools are fantastic. But my thesis is that by using technology like black and white and this app and things like that, we are actually losing our own ability, or we're limiting our ability to contend with these challenges in the real world, right? Because it's making it easier for you not to use like hard, strong willpower to discipline yourself to stay away from Instagram, right? And I think this goes into some of the science of like gambling. When you go to Vegas, you can run out of money or you can stop yourself, right? And so in real time, what do you think about my thesis of, I agree that you shouldn't spend all your time scrolling and consuming content that drives you down a black hole or maybe is difficult for you. But at some point, using some small amounts of willpower and increasing amounts so that we can control ourselves and the cravings and the dopamine hits and things like that without the need for like a crutch.
Yeah, no, I think you bring up such a powerful case and point. And I think that willpower coupled with intention can definitely get you really far. But I also think that engaging in systems and thinking of your environment as part of your system, in the micro example that I shared, it's causing a lot of friction, so to say. I think that coupled with your comments on willpower can probably get you farther in terms of behavior change for a long period of time.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I agree with that. I think the system gives you the boost when your willpower is running out because it's a long day, you got nothing else to do, and you're like, okay, fine, I'll give in, right? So
Yeah.
I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
This sensitization that we've had, or even desensitization that we've had with these dopamine hits from social media or sex or gambling, drugs, etc. It's very interesting because I am now starting to sometimes feel like, we all have our bad moments where we're consuming a lot of just content or always on our phones, etc. That to get to the next level of high or that next level of dopamine, it takes a larger stimulus or a stimulus that you need more often. And so kind of thinking about it from that neuroscience perspective has really grounded me in some of my day-to-day habits.
Yeah. Using it as training wheels, bumpers on a bowling alley. There's so much that we already have to make decisions on where there's not an app to control whether or not I go to my pantry and grab that slice of, whatever, that piece of chocolate. There's already a lot of inherent willpower decisions that are built into our day. And there's things we can do to mitigate it. Things like we get enough sleep, we move, we make sure we're eating well so we don't have these cravings for things that don't fuel us. But and moderation, that's the other thing. But I don't feel like it's a black and white answer.
Yeah.
I think it's really easy to get online and make a comment like yours and really do it from the lens of, let me just challenge you to look at this differently.
Yeah.
Does this apply or not? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But most people on social media, because there's not a filter, I feel like it's so quick to just tap out a response and be like, no, that's wrong. Or, oh my gosh, you're so right. Blah, blah, blah. It's just a matter of yes and.
Well, I'll share the comment. Someone was talking about their phone being a distraction and using tools to limit the distraction of your phone. So I said, and you're right. I said, instead of thinking your phone is a distraction, what if you thought that you were distracted? Right. And just and it's something that we learned in coaching is to take the power and turn it back inside. And well, the phone is not distracting any more distracting than the clouds and the birds in the sky. I have the ability to not be distracted by the butterfly that flies by while I'm running. And I have the ability to not be distracted by my phone. And if you can take that and extrapolate it out to life, right? It's not that you have to go spend your money. It's not that you have to speed. It's really bringing it back in and understanding that whatever comes your way, it's not that alcohol is intoxicating, you're intoxicated, right? Things like that. And I think that's a really powerful framework that has served me. And I don't know if it'll work with anybody else, but it's served me to remind me to say, no, I do have the control to put my phone away. I don't have to be a slave to anything else.
To piggyback off of that wonderful point, a lot of this is identity shifting as well. I am a focused individual, for example, and really having your belief system drive your behavior.
Yeah.
It's who are you being in the moment? A healthy person isn't going to dive for the Doritos. They're going to go eat a handful of nuts or maybe grab a banana.
Yeah, absolutely.
Somebody who really understands the power of technology and things. And I honestly, a lot of this is engineered to set us back, right? They have so many incredibly smart people designing the layouts of these phones and things to suck us in. So it's not even just human willpower. It's like a constructed sort of falsity that is so easy to fall into.
One thing that I like to bring up here is we talk a lot about dopamine, but I think that even more powerful is what is the anti-dopamine. And to me, the anti-dopamine is oxytocin. So not to go too medical, but oxytocin is that chemical that is released from your pituitary that really drives connection. And so, one practical point that I've started to center myself on is how can I combat dopamine, which is really at a healthy level is important for focus and motivation, but combat it with oxytocin on a day-to-day basis. Random acts of kindness, sending flowers to my wife at work, acts of gratitude, making sure that I take a look at my successes right now and recognize that they could be transient. And I'm just so grateful of the love and support I've received thus far to get to this stage. And even just celebrating the mini wins, which I think, as you guys know, can sometimes get you out of some dark times.
Mm-hmm.
So much truth to there. Very often, it is the subtlety in how you see life that determines whether or not it's going to be fulfilling or draining.
Yeah. And I appreciate the comment about oxytocin. I think that is for a lot of our listeners, including myself, that are so science-based, and like that's a legitimate, logical reason for like a gratitude practice, for celebrating small wins, because it does take the edge off of needing that compounding. Like there's no sky, the sky is not the limit for dopamine. Like you can keep going and sensitize yourself, and you've got to take yourself off of the dopamine addiction and the oxytocin. That was really nice. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Well, we have a huge episode, and here we are talking about content and consumption and how we're slaves to our phone. By the way, I should let the listeners know that we try very, very hard to not let you know how far in advance we're recording these, but we did slip. And if you listen back, you'll know that we said where we are relative to the TikTok ban, and you can figure out when this episode drops and when we recorded. So
that's my bad.
No, it's fine. No, it's good. If you do, let us know. So it'll be a little game we play for the listeners that get all the way through our oxytocin Instagram dopamine hit conversation.
When I think of like a PICU doctor, they're logical. They're very, it is a surgeon-esque job. Not quite there, but it is. And to come out and say things like, but I love singing Bollywood. Tell us about that.
I appreciate you saying that. And I think internally, I may have this very rigid type A. And I think many of the listeners have this mindset of, being very organized and logical throughout things. And just like how you were mentioning the intentionality of like how you see life and view life, I kind of think of it as Flubber from Robin Williams. It's very amorphous, and the vision that I really have is, in order for us to build the future and be happy, a couple of principles that I center myself on is staying in the present and appreciating the gift of the present. And then secondly, actually not having any expectations. And whenever I say that, I think, Dinesh, I also am sometimes I rock the Instagram comments, because when I write, hey, don't have expectations, people are like, what do you mean? Like, we are South Asians. We got to get far. We want to advance our careers. But the secret to happiness that I've found is when you are going to separate yourself from the expectations and live life without external expectations, you're going to feel much more fulfilled, because the definition of frustration is when your expectation doesn't align with reality. And so if you just live life without expectation, you are just fueled by your inner scorecard rather than some external goal.
Seema's question was fantastic about like we have this other dimension to us that maybe doesn't line up with the life choices or career path we've made, like your PICU Doc, and the Bollywood is kind of like, where does that fit in, right? And I looking at your YouTube page, 13 years ago, you posted Rahul and Vidya's Bollywood medley, and then Rahul sings Tujhe Bhula Diya, and then another 11 years ago, 2 years later, you posted another cover. And now you have videos teaching people in Africa how to study for USMLE or other types of tests, right? So it's okay if it takes time for that to develop. It's okay if it's not a priority while we focus on our careers and things like that. The important thing is to recognize that if it's part of our identity, it's not going anywhere. And if you keep stifling it, you create what's called an integrity gap where
Mhm.
you're not, and you're not being authentic, you're not doing the things that fuel you. A lot of us are surprised, like, why does life feel so hard? Why does it feel so sticky? Why am I not succeeding? It's because we're not bringing all of ourselves together. And it starts to
Mhm.
feel like you're in a rut, or, um, everyone else is succeeding, but nothing works for you. It's because the thing that's supposed to work for you is the thing that you're shunning away, right?
Yeah.
So congratulations.
I loved what you just said. It was really, really powerful and insightful. And
You went
listeners,
down memory lane right there. 13 years ago. Divya and Rahul. Divya, if you're listening to this, we got to come back with the duet.
you got to
I
send it
love
to
it.
her.
I should. Absolutely.
Who is Divya? Like, just tell us.
She was just some one of my classmates in medical school, and there was this like cultural show of that they wanted us to perform at, and I still remember being in the dorm room and practicing on our garage band on our Mac. So this comes full
Love it.
circle. Thanks,
I
Dinesh.
love it. Well, one of the things that I really enjoy about the podcast is, obviously meeting new people. I would never meet you otherwise in life. We would just pass on the internet. But the deep ability of legalized stalking, I get to figure you out and ask you lots of questions.
You're really good at
And
it.
well, thank you. I mean, I've had a lot of practice. You can ask the people in my life. But I mean, I just enjoy learning about people because I think that all of us have so many facets. And for anyone that gets to a point in life where they look at another person and says, I can't learn anything from you, I am good the way I am, there's nothing about you that can make me better, I think that's a very difficult place to be. And so I try consciously to look at everyone that comes onto the podcast and see in this contribution way of like, okay, how can this all be additive for us to add something to you and for you to add something to us? And I think it's fantastic. It's a great use of my time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What drives you to do all of these things in the way that you do them? Because I think for the three of us, things like detach from expectation, incorporate all of yourself authentically, have fun while doing it. Fun is critical to your success. All of these things. Those are, I would say at this point, intuitive to us, but they weren't always intuitive, at least not to me.
Same. Yeah.
Tell us what happened there.
When I look at motivation, I try to center myself on the inner scorecard and the external scorecard. And what I mean by that is the external scorecard may be the number of subscribers, which I may have, the amount of income that I generate from my online courses, the ability for me to have this life outside of medicine or life within medicine. But, I think that the internal metrics have really driven me. And what that really boils down to are fulfillment, mastery, contribution. And I think that when I can align my inner scorecard as I just want to be the best, and I don't mean to say this in a egotistical way, but I genuinely want to improve each and every day so that, let's say, for example, as a micro example, when somebody says USMLE, they say HyGuru right afterwards. And having that mindset of wanting to be the best and aligning your core values and day-to-day habits with that long game really helps me get out of bed at my 3:45 a.m. wake up time. But I will say that I don't sacrifice on my sleep. I go to bed like a geriatric grandpa at 7:45 or 8, much to my wife's chagrin. So
yeah, that's all well and good.
Yeah.
But I like you share the bedtime poll. What happened to get you to create these insights for yourself? Because there's usually a story.
One sentinel event that really helped me center myself just in life in general was my second year of medical school. My sister and I are 6 years apart, and I was home for spring break, and I was actually 2 weeks away from my own USMLE exam. And she ended up having a headache, and we thought that was just the flu. And long story short, next thing you know, she's seizing in my mom's arms, and we are in the corner of the emergency room bay, seeing her get intubated and then life flighted, and she was 12 at the time. And that moment really shifted my mindset. When you're on the patient side of things and when you are at a very vulnerable spot, the most innocent person in your family that is going through this, it's really driven me to become more intentional about my life. And God willing, my sister Neha is doing very well now. And her perspectives on life, when she's like, hey, no, I went through this and I can just walk, and I'm really grateful for that. I just am so inspired by that. And that emotional moment has really shaped me. And whether that's consciously or subconsciously, I appreciate you allowing me to share that.
I saw your TED Talk on it. It really is inspiring to hear you relay that, because I think a lot of us can experience those things, and not to say that we wouldn't draw our own insights from it, but you can just go back to life the way as it was, like, oh, she's fine now, and not reflect on it. I think people don't spend enough time reflecting and extrapolating. And so,
and it's a really slippery slope, because sometimes we think of that adversity as a external kind of marker of doom, and why is this happening to me? And, you know, this is a negative in my life compared to the other aspects of my life. And I really, especially now, it hit me yesterday, 2 a.m. on call. I'm like, isn't it crazy that, like, out of Neha's whole story, because she ended up, they found a brain tumor underlying, she went through radiation, she's been in and out of the PICU, and it comes full circle that I'm a pediatric intensivist now. And to get out of my call room to see that family, it just kind of shifts my perspective that I need to be on my A game. Because you know what? All those neurosurgeons that emergently drilled a burr hole into my sister's brain, they were on their A game that night at 2 a.m. And I really am driven by that aspect of giving back and really making sure that it's my purpose and I can serve that family.
I want to push in a little bit on this thread here a little bit and pull a little bit more. Let's for a moment suspend our humility and our humbleness and ask for forgiveness that we're going to suspend our humility. And let's say the three of us believe that what we're describing of self-mastery, being on your A game, striving every day to do the work to be slightly better than you were before, and contributing and putting forth and moving forward is good for everyone. We're just hypothetically saying, we're not trying to put doctrine or propaganda on everyone in different seasons in life and things like that. But in a moment, let's just say that's the way we think everyone should live their life, or that's the purpose of life. What do you say to someone who says something along the following line? Well, life should be done easy. I deserve to relax, right? My life is pretty good the way it is. I like my free time and I like to spend it on hobbies. You guys just told me hobbies are great. And like, the opposite of what you're saying is chasing. And we've all heard the parables of, like, keep wanting more, you keep wanting, you're never satisfied. You're left with this emptiness inside of you that you're never fulfilled. And I know that there's a nuance there. There's a nuance between chasing from scarcity and a nuance from chasing out of curiosity, right? Or pushing yourself to a new level. But what do you say to someone who's like, I don't need to try any longer, guys. I made it. I've got a house in the burbs. I like my free time. I love watching TV or watching sports. I love going for walks. I've reached my limit of mastering that I want. And if this is all there is, that's cool.
It's an interesting perspective. I try to think of it as like trying to traverse a mountain. And there are some people who, as they are traversing the mountain, they want to just sit there and maybe pause and just kind of say, I've reached the top of the mountain. And maybe in your case example, as they are going for their walks, they're just kind of coasting, so to say. They're just really examining the beauty at that mountaintop. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. And if we incorporate the Japanese proverbs of like wabi sabi, another kind of mindset comes in, and that is that there is a transient nature of being at the peak and exhibiting or appreciating that beauty.
Yeah.
And I think the corollary, the next step to your wonderful example is when you are coasting and you're at the top of the peak and you're looking at the beauty around you and saying, I'm content, I'm happy. Suddenly in the distance, you see another peak.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that everybody has their own innate journey, but how do we balance staying on top of a peak and knowing that's the season of our life, and then appreciating or understanding when's that next peak and when do I need to chase it?
How do we manage our mind to take the risk of going to that next peak and losing the view that we have right now? Because, David Brooks wrote a great book called The Second Mountain. And he talks about, I don't know if either of you have read it, but he talks about the first peak that we ascend is driven internally for recognition, accolades, achievement, things like that. But for one reason or another, we're thrown off of that peak. Either we throw ourselves off, like tragedy hits, or something else, we lose a job or something like that. And the second peak that we climb is more holistic. It's about what can we do for other people around us because we've already achieved and proved to ourselves that we're worthy of the things that the world has to offer by way of indicia of success, right? And once you've proven that you're worthy of those things, that then takes away the scarcity. And then you can say, okay, well, there's that other mountain out there. I wonder what it would be like from up there. If this is this good, I'm willing to give up the good for the great. And is that, in your mind, is that how you would characterize where you are right now, Rahul?
That's a wonderful question. To be honest, I feel sometimes I am going to not only be chasing the mountain that is higher up. I think there's beauty in chasing the mountain that's lower down, in the sense that there might be some beauty in going through a more simple lifestyle, or not chasing as much, or being in a state of adversity. And rather than looking at the adversity as something that, like, I'm going to be knocked down and then suddenly be resilient and rise up like the phoenix.
Yeah.
When you're on that lower mountain, like when you were mentioning, getting knocked down, having that anti-fragile mindset of how do we let adversity really fuel us to get to another peak. And, this mountain analogy is great. I'm glad that we can all center ourselves on it.
The philosophy that's coming to mind for me is equanimity in terms of effort and ease, right? You make the effort, but can you make it from a place that is easeful, that is, there's not, again, going back to expectation, not saying I'm going to get this far by doing this thing. If I push this button, this widget's going to come out. There is an art, a nuance to saying, I'm going to make this effort and I'm going to find the most easeful way to do it with gratitude, to do it with joy, to do it with the desire to impact other people. The intention behind the action is really, really critical, I think, in everything that we do. Just the other day, yesterday, actually, we were cleaning up our kids' playroom, and I started to feel some frustration build with us, me and my husband, and having that perspective even of, wait, what is the issue here? What is the fear that's causing the frustration? And then the decision to stop and tune into ourselves, look at where we're at and go, okay, well, if we continue to put things away and complain about the kids don't listen and the kids this and the kids that, what you're doing is actually transferring subtle energy, right? Everything has gross energy, like a physical, I can pick up the mug, but there's also a subtle energy behind it that is joyful or healing or positive. And when you go through life going, it's good enough, it's good enough, it's good enough, and I'm not going to push for more. Or when you go through life and you're going, I've got to do more, I've got to get the bigger house, I've got to get the Louis Vuitton, I've got to get the latest car that's out there, I've got to, all of that, just you're putting these ingredients into a pot, if you will. And then what comes out, if you're putting fear and scarcity and anxiety into the pot, guess what's going to come out?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's
So
fair.
I feel like people are on this continuum, right? They're either too complacent to actually make changes in their lives, and whether or not that's the best thing for them is up to them to decide. It's nobody else's. There's people on the other side who just can't stop themselves. It's hyperactivity to the point where they're unable to see the beauty around them. But there's, I think, a lot of people in the middle where it's not that they're not doing the work, right? They are reflecting. They are employing gratitude, moving, taking their walks. But sometimes these vasanas, if you will, like the idea that you have these likes or dislikes that you have. I like to watch a lot of tennis, or I love coffee, or whatever, right? Those can get in the way if unchecked. So what do you do? Because you're human and you have these tendencies. What do you do to self-manage?
What comes to mind is I read a lot of business books, and one of them is by Naval Ravikant, and he really talks a lot about like the long game. And so I've really tried to make sure that as I'm on this journey that we all are painting, how can I transition it from these small like mini sprints where I am essentially getting to empty and then needing some time to maybe veer off the road or just rest there and then fuel myself up and then go for that next sprint, to more playing that long game where I'm maybe taking a break and recognizing this is the season for me to be more focused on my health or my relationships. And rather than making the gas tank go to empty, I'm actually filling it up 3/4 of the time, and I'm maybe stopping work at a more intentional time. And the more that I've started to come from a lens of serving others and playing this long game, I've, at least from a business aspect or even a clinical fulfillment aspect, I've felt a lot better because I felt like that internal anxiety and that internal trigger has subsided a little bit more.
Yeah, really good. And I think baked in that, what I can contribute to that is oftentimes we're looking for the one thing that will have the highest ROI. So like, okay, I have some free time. I'm going to go to the gym, but let me find the best exercise or the best treadmill to get me to where I am. And what I've learned is that it's not so much finding the thing that you're going to, or the season of your life. It's so much just experimenting and trying different things and allowing yourself to progress in the general direction, and then continuously to fine tune, because the risk is in stopping the progress because you're trying to analyze or figure out where to go next, and then momentum will be tougher to overcome. So if it's a season for your health, you don't have to wait till the gym in your basement is done. You start walking today, right?
Yeah.
Or start playing basketball today or something like that. And then, maybe you roll your ankle. You can't play basketball any longer. So then you find something else. You take up boxing or something like that. And in the exploration is where the journey is built. And I mean, I think that has been one of the most profound insights I've found for my own self.
Yeah. No, Dinesh, you bring up such a good point, that preferential bias towards action.
Yeah.
There's a wonderful quote: ideas without execution are mere delusions.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we're thinking about the journey of life and going down these different seasons, or whether maybe you are in a time where you're sprinting to another goal, or it might be very career oriented, the ability to just begin and not stay in that planning phase, but just really go towards execution, and having that trust that you will find the path after you just merely execute, that has really driven me to probably put some BS content out there, to be very honest with you, unedited, etc. But progress is so much more powerful than perfection.
Yeah. You just said it better than I did. So
Yeah.
listeners, if you're ever wondering what it's like to have someone a couple of decades younger than you sound smarter and more articulate and eloquent than you, well, this is it. This is what it sounds like.
No, I'm loving
Seriously.
this discussion.
Likewise, I think it's a lot of fun. But that was a really good, succinct way to really drive the point home, because it is a preferential bias. I can't even spell preferential, dude. Like, it is a preferential bias towards action that really drives the progress, versus what a lot of us do is a preferential bias to finding an analytical solution first, right? Look, I know big words too, Seema. Come on, give me some credit here.
Where did I throw out a big word? I don't even.
No, I had a big word.
You had a big word.
Yeah.
Well, both of you, what you said kind of sparked the question for me of, so Rahul, you have this company, HyGuru, right? And it is all, again, about helping students pass these really incredible exams. Why put your effort there? You've built this community online, on YouTube, on Instagram, huge, to the point where you've got people in Kenya who have just the one internet connection, are all crowding around a single laptop and taking notes on their own, because the information you provide is so valuable.
I got goosebumps when you said that. Thank you.
This is your story that I'm just amplifying, right? It's really incredible what you've done. So what's behind that? Why go back to test prep and build this company on that?
One of the aspects that I will say is that it is something that I probably just fell into, just being a natural born teacher, taking the timeline and history of HyGuru. I used to actually just tutor the really pretty girls in my med school class, and they would pay me $20 an hour. And then I'd go to the pub and just, blow that tutoring money. And, it suddenly started to evolve into, wait a second, there is a unique way that I can teach this information that is grounded in adult learning theory. And so what has really been the driver for HyGuru in particular is I recognize that this exam is a gateway for a student, let's say from Iran or even Harvard, to get to where they want to go because they have this ideal vision. Usually when I coach students, they're saying, man, I want to be that ophthalmologist because my uncle is this ophthalmologist and I've always had this vision, no pun intended, to be an ophthalmologist. And I think that it's powerful to help students with each of these steps to get to that ideal vision of what they, at a very young age, in their 20s, are envisioning. And I want to also say that this is the USMLE in particular is known as a high stakes exam.
Mm-hmm.
So a high stakes exam, like these certifying exams, are considered high stakes. And I take that word and I'm like, whoa, like that sounds really powerful. And what that translates to is, wait a second, students need intense focus. They need to manage their external triggers or distractions and their internal triggers. They need to also have this anti-fragile mindset that some of the days it's going to suck to study and they're going to get really bad test scores, but that doesn't mean that you can't be that ophthalmologist. And so what I've started to realize that it's not the content. It's actually building these skills and mindsets so that then they are able to get to their ideal vision and I'm able to coach the gap. And man, I thought that this company would just be content driven and that's it. It's so much more relationship and skills building that I've started to focus on.
Ladies and gentlemen, one of the things that Seema and I try to do on this podcast is to tease out the genius from each one of our guests. And I know Rahul shared his genius there, but I'm not sure if we all caught it because it was quickly. While I was in college and med school buying pretty girls drinks, Rahul figured out how to get the pretty girls to buy him drinks. Did you pick up on that, Seema?
Did not, actually.
Because he used their money to go to the bar and buy himself drinks. That I caught that genius, Rahul. I caught it.
God. Maybe it's because I've never experienced the other side of this. Guys always bought me drinks, so I don't know.
I know this guy figured out how to get the girls to buy him drinks. Bravo,
oh
bravo.
My gosh. Yeah. How does your wife feel about that?
It all ended in a, I say this in a very giddy way. Like it all ended once we met in med school. So it was very short lived for a hot 18 months, and here we are 10 years later. So,
I
I had my sprint. I had my season of life.
You had your season of life.
You did. You did. I can appreciate that you went from the content to a more philosophical, aspirational, human connection driven motivation, because you are making accessible to someone a life that they're aiming for, right? And I have a friend who buys old houses and flips them, right? And
Oh, cool.
that's kind of a career or thing that real estate might have a little bit of a negative connotation, where people are just like putting lipstick on a pig and selling it to you for money, right? But the way he does it is that he looks at something that no one wants anymore and they're willing to like get rid of it. It's an old house, and I'm creating a place where someone can have a home and create memories with their family, right? And I find that there's a lot of value in approaching the work that we're doing from that perspective, right? You could be doing test prep, or you could be giving someone a shot at their dreams. One of those ways of characterizing the work we do has a lot of gravity, has a lot of pull potential to it, right? So we're not just having virtual conversations. We're actually trying to share inspiration. Like our job is to go find people like you and deliver them to the most convenient way to someone, which is on their phone, so they can listen to it.
The two words that resonate with me as you were building up to this question is perceived value. So what that really means is, how can you change the perception of what you are trying to accomplish and balance that with value, which is quality divided by cost. And sometimes people say cost is financial, but I want to expand that definition of cost in terms of time, energy, sacrifice. That's all in that denominator. So what I've done with HyGuru is I've kind of been scrappy with this entrepreneurial journey, is try to build perceived value, selling somebody on a dream in a genuine manner, and then positioning myself as a business owner to over deliver high quality at a optimal cost. One of the micro examples that I can share is like my course is actually really well positioned when somebody has 6 weeks before their exam. It's not really too good for like a 2-year, I'm going to learn during med school. But if you have 6 weeks, that is where HyGuru is usually positioned. And what I've started to do is I've tried to center myself on perceived value, over delivering the quality, keeping the cost very optimal. And then again, looking at it like a coaching framework, how do I coach the gap in a very individualistic mindset? It resonated with me when you were talking about the flipping homes and the messaging aspect.
Yeah. And now a message from our sponsor, HyGuru, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
No, I love it. I love it.
If anybody wants a mug, they are more than willing. I just like got these high quality mugs, so I'm totally happy to give them away to your listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic. Loka said he would give away T-shirts to our listeners, and people wanted the T-shirts. So we've got some HyGuru mugs, especially as our listeners identify in their families people who are pursuing a med school dream or some sort of dream where there's test prep or things like that. Reach out to us. We'll connect you with Rahul, and I mean, I can tell you from just the hour or so that I've met him, he's good people. You want to know him.
Yeah. One more question that kind of came up, if I can go back just a little bit in time, was you were talking about giving these students what they needed and offering them a shot at what they really want to create in life. And for South Asians, any immigrant, right, who's aiming to level up or maintain, there can be, going back, this element of, I've got to make it. I feel this pressure, especially when you're 20 something and you haven't made it yet in that sense, in the external sense. In many ways, I think most 20-year-olds, if you're taking the USMLEs, you've made it. Okay. Like, let's just call that out. But that's not the perspective that I had when I was taking my NBDEs. If you had said you've made it, you're good, I would not have believed you. But so much of that thinking taints our ability to actually own these exams rather than have the exams own us.
Mhm.
So I'm curious what your approach is when you're teaching these students and you're seeing these tendencies and these thoughts come up. What is your process? Do you spend time with them on that, or do you just let them just focus on the didactic academia of it?
The two things that I have doubled down on is number one, ego sublimation. And that is really focusing on aligning values more internal rather than external. Second is having the student who's very impressionable to focus on what's in the realm of their control. And I take this even further in medical education theory. There is something called the zone of proximal development. And that is basically the intersection between their current skill set and just right outside of their current skill set or a challenge for them. And imbibing a curiosity mindset so that then they recognize that growth comes outside of your comfort zone honestly really shifts the learners. And at a micro example, as I go through this philosophy with them, they shift away from just reading, passively from a board review textbook to actually leaning into practice exams and building that resilience of like, oh my gosh, I'm going to suck at first. But just like the Dunning-Kruger effect tells us, that you'll go into the valley of despair, but if you just stick with it a little bit longer, you'll find that exponential rise. And trying to coach from an ego sublimation mindset that progress is not linear is what drives me every day.
So good.
And I'm sure these kids are I hope they're taking these lessons and then really starting to see how that's true. So in every aspect of life, not just for the OSCEs, not just for step exams, but for everything.
It's
Absolutely.
definitely a stressful time. I mean, I'm sure you all have experienced that with your own high stakes exams, or if you know somebody that is taking the USMLE, it is sometimes physically even very demanding for people. And I am grateful for the opportunity to be similar to, my clinical job at kind of that more vulnerable moments. And how can I turn that into something really beautiful?
Yeah. Well, you're doing an amazing job at everything you're doing. I couldn't be more proud to know you and call you a friend and have
thank
you
you.
on the podcast. I am just impressed with everything you're doing. So
I
thank you
hope
for
we
being
stay in
this.
touch. We
Absolutely.
gotta, keep this going. This was awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. You do a lot of things in a test prep. You're a learner. You're so focused on the modern learner. But tell us, from everything that you've experienced, whether as a doctor, as a Bollywood singer, everything that makes Rahul Damania who he is, what is one thing that if we all did today, this afternoon, by tomorrow, we would have a slightly different life?
I can't boil it down to one, but I'm going to try.
Give as many as you want.
I love it. One component that really drives me, especially because we may have a listenership that is kind of in that career mode, so to say, and these are great forums for us to kind of slow down and take that macro lens of life. Making your impact greater than your income is one thing that really can drive you forward each and every day. The second thing is the power of walking outside without your phone. It's hella cold here in Cleveland, so maybe a treadmill will do. But walking really unlocks so much creativity. And that's just the one practical point that honestly in the last few months has driven me forward, because the science behind walking really allows for you to solve such challenging problems. It takes all of that mental energy from your prefrontal cortex, which helps with problem solving, shifts it to the motor cortex. It offloads your prefrontal cortex. And that's why we have the best ideas when we're in the shower or when we are just walking with our own inner thoughts. Those are the two, one practical, one philosophical perspective that I'd probably leave you guys with.
I love that. Taking a walk is one of my favorite things to do, especially when I'm feeling a little bit stuck.
Yeah. That is such a good piece of advice. Some time during your day where you're not reactive. I just read Seven Rules for Life by Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I'll try to do Arnold's voice, but he's like, even if you're in the jacuzzi, just take some time for yourself. And I think that's true. I think we're always reactive and responsive to things outside of us, whether it's kids, the house, the work, the email, all things that we've got to do, that we don't make space for the creativity to bubble up and for us to think about ideas. So we need to create thinking time now.
Such a powerful high performance habit, if you will. Yeah. This is actually one of my favorite parts of the podcast, which is called Ask It Forward. So listeners, if you are new to the show, what this means is that we've had a guest before Rahul leave a question for him to answer. And then Rahul, you'll get a chance to answer it and then leave a question forward for the next guest. And you don't know who they are, when we're going to record, what their area of expertise is, nothing. You ready to play?
Ready. Let's do it.
Okay. So this question is from Dr. Umesh Wadhwani, who is all about natural healing, holistic healing, and has a really unique approach, especially when you compare how we do things as Western trained doctors. And so his question for you, Rahul, was, if money wasn't a factor, what would you be doing?
I will answer pretty simply. I feel, and this is such probably a cop-out answer, I just wouldn't change what I am doing right now. I feel like I am at a spot, at least right now in my life, where I feel relatively fulfilled and probably double down on my health. I think that is always a gap that we all are centering ourselves on. So that's a great question. I don't think I'm doing justice to it.
Well, to me, that just says you're super aligned in your dharma and your everything to just move forward and you're on the right path. He actually cheated and he asked you 2 questions. So,
my God, like a USMLE question.
Well, you said the first answer was a cop-out, so I guess
no, that's fair.
He knew.
You can hook me with the other one.
Well, just to give you a sense, do you know who Dr. Umesh Wadhwani is?
I don't. I'm going to have to take a deep dive.
Yeah, he lives in India. He's, I think, a UK trained education in UK, lives in India. He delivers nutritional advice for reversing sort of lifestyle diseases.
Fascinating.
In 5 different languages. He's got 5 different Instagram pages, and he delivers advice to people, our parents' generation, so 50s, 60s, nutritional advice on how they can balance their lifestyle, reverse cholesterol, diabetes, things like that, without changing their diet in 5 different languages.
That is impressive. Yeah, amazing.
He's an impressive
guy.
So
inspiring. Yeah.
Which is why the questions are on overdrive.
Yeah.
So, okay, he did ask, actually, what is the one thing you'd never do in life?
I think it would be compromising my integrity for short-term goals. It's really hard in this day and age to stick to a value system, and that's something that for any aspect, compromising my integrity has been something that probably is never going to be in the question.
I love it.
That's amazing. Yeah.
A long time ago, someone said to me that the barometer they use on whether they do something is would my mom be proud of it, right?
Well said.
If my mom would be proud of it, I'm going to do it. Doesn't matter what you think about it. But if not, that changes the calculus a little bit. So I appreciate that. That's a really well worded answer.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So now it's your turn. What would you like to ask of the next guest?
For the next guest, one daily habit that they wished they started a decade ago, and how that habit right now is shaping your life, and why you think it would have been helpful to start much earlier.
I'm excited to see who's going to get a chance to answer that. Yeah. All right.
Yes.
Rahul, you've spent a lot of time with us, and this has been such a great episode. Outside of using words to thank you, there's really no way for us to thank you. What we do at the Happy and Human podcast is give you the opportunity to share a cause or an organization that you feel close and aligned to with our listeners. And on behalf of you, as a way to say thank you, we'll make a contribution to that organization. Our listeners have learned a lot, and we don't think that our impact should stop there.
Yeah, I am very fascinated about the potential of our next generation. I think that sometimes the next generation does get a rep that, they might be broken or they're just different, etc. And one organization that really tries to highlight the potential of youth is Big Big Brothers Big Sisters,
Mhm.
and that organization really empowers young minds underserved in underserved regions to be paired with a elder mentor that is just probably few steps away.
So I'm familiar a little bit with Big Brothers Big Sisters. They have different chapters. Should we direct our contribution to the Big Brothers Big Sisters of Cleveland?
That would be awesome. Yeah, that would be great.
Terrific.
So
Terrific.
good. Okay, so you are Bollywood singing away, and you are impacting people from around the world to be the best versions of themselves in their practice of medicine and as human beings in general. What else are you excited about? What do you want to share with the listeners? Where can they find you? Give us the deets.
You can find me on LinkedIn, Rahul Damania. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok. It is at HyGuru Prep, HYGURU Prep. I was so inspired to keep a little South Asian twang with putting the guru in the business name. So excited to connect with your listenership.